Firms that sell a good or service in a market are grouped into one of four categories based on various characteristics. These four market structures are called monopolistic competition, oligopoly, perfect competition, and monopoly. The first market structure I'm going to be talking about is monopolistic competition. There are many firms in this type of market, and there are very few barriers to entry, which means firms can easily leave and enter the market in the long run based on if economic profits or losses are being made. The goods in a monopolistically competitive market are differentiated. So, for example, fast food restaurants could be known for burgers or chicken, and there are differences in the quality of food between, say, a McDonald's burger and a Jack in the Box burger. Because of this, individual firms have a bit of control over their own prices. The slightly higher quality of some restaurants allows them to charge a bit more for their goods. At the same time, if they charge way too much compared to their competitors, the goods and services are close enough substitutes that customers would simply go to their competitors. Advertising is a factor in monopolistically competitive markets as firms seek to differentiate goods from their competitors through branding. If they make their products a name brand or desirable brand, they can attract a larger customer base. Overall, there is no economic profit for firms in a monopolistically competitive market in the long run. This is caused by firms being able to enter and leave the market as they want. As firms enter, drawn by the economic profit, the demand curves for individual firms shift left. This reduces profit, causing some firms to leave the market again. Firms keep leaving and entering the market until an equilibrium is settled on, where only normal profits are being made. The market is both allocatively and productively inefficient in the long run. They're inefficient because firms have market power. Because the demand curve is downward sloping, not perfectly elastic, firms can charge slightly higher prices without losing all their customers. Firms then set prices where price is higher than the marginal cost, meaning they are not producing at their production capacity and there is dead weight loss. They are also not producing at the point where the price is equal to the minimum of the ATC, meaning they are not productively efficient. For my example of monopolistic competition, I chose shops that sell baked goods in Hong Kong. To be more specific and allow for better price and differentiability comparisons, I chose a specific good, which was slices of cake. Cakes are sold in so many different forms throughout Hong Kong, from the posh French bakeries to Starbucks to small local bakeries. Walk around the streets and you'll see a plethora of choices of baked goods, and depending on the price you're willing to pay, there's a different shop for everyone's preferred price range. Just in the Jordan MTR station, in the area about 5 steps outside one of the exits, I found a Mrs. Fields cookie shop, a Maxim's cake shop, Starbucks, and a local bakery, all selling at very different prices. For a short price comparison, Starbucks cake slices average around $34 per slice. Maxim's cakes were considerably cheaper, averaging around $12 per slice. Although Mrs. Fields sells a slightly different good in the form of brownies, the good is still comparable enough, and it sells for about $16.5. Finally, the local bakery sold slices for about $22. Clearly, there are tons of different firms in the market if we examine all of Hong Kong, and they sell different quality of goods for very different prices. The local bakery I took a look at was a very plain storefront and did not look like it took a huge investment up front to enter the market of selling cakes. I did not see a huge amount of advertising in these shops, although there were a few signs for some special deals. I think all of these characteristics fit the model of monopolistic competition. Most of these bakeries are probably not making more than a normal profit because there are so many competitors who drive down prices in the market. At the same time, they are probably still charging a higher price than what would be efficient for the market. An oligopoly is a market structure with very few number of firms that each have a large share of the market. The reason for such few firms is that there are quite considerable barriers to entry, which could sometimes be similar factors to a monopoly, just in a weaker form. Specifically, oligopolies benefit from economies of scale, so the larger and more established a firm is, the more they benefit from things like purchasing in bulk. Smaller firms who don't have these cost advantages are often not able to survive in the market. Like in monopolistic competition, the firms are not price takers, although they often avoid competing on price and keep their prices very similar since a price war would only lose profits for all firms in the long run. Since they don't compete on prices, advertising is very prevalent, with firms trying to pass their goods off as superior through things like rewards program and special deals. A characteristic different to most other market structures is that goods can be homogeneous or differentiated, although the example I chose sells homogeneous goods. Oligopolies are not productively or allocatively efficient. They decide to produce only until marginal cost equals marginal revenue, which is before the point where marginal cost intersects the minimum of average total cost, so they are productively inefficient. They are not allocatively efficient because at the output they produce, marginal cost does not intersect market demand, meaning they produce less than the market demands. Overall, price setting power leads to inefficiency because firms produce to the point that maximizes their profit, not what is best for the market. If we assume that oligopolies collude in the long run instead of competing, there are long-run economic profits as they can keep prices high. For oligopoly, I found a duopoly in convenience stores in Hong Kong. Walk around Hong Kong and chances are the only two convenience stores you will find are Circle K and 7-Eleven. In the case of this oligopoly, the goods are not differentiated as they sell almost all of the same goods. A characteristic of oligopolies is that prices are almost always very similar within the firms as they try to avoid a price war that would leave them both worse off. We can see this is the case through a price comparison of various goods. Beginning with gum, at Circle K, 2 packs cost 17.8 Hong Kong dollars, while at 7-Eleven they cost 18. Barbecue chips for $12.9 at Circle K cost 13.59 at 7-Eleven. Gatorade for 14 at Circle K costs 14.50 at 7-Eleven. As we can see, the costs are extremely close. Although they are not exactly the same, the price of the goods in question are low enough that either firm wouldn't lose customers over a price difference of less than $1, but they keep prices close since more radical price changes would cause losses. Another noticeable characteristic was the huge presence of special signs at Circle K, large signs advertising a deal at 7-Eleven, and 2 or 3 good bought price specials at both stores. This fits with my earlier discussed characteristic of oligopolies in terms of lots of advertising. There have been other convenience stores that have tried to enter the market and failed, like a chain called Vingo, for example. This chain has now been reduced down to 1 store in Wan Chai, showing the high barriers of entry which cause new firms to be outcompeted. With the clear collusion in prices and the economies of scale caused by many of these convenience stores around Hong Kong, I would imagine economic profits are being made. Because these are often the most convenient option to buy something quickly, they can likely charge a price higher than what would be efficient for the market. A monopoly is a market which only has one firm because the barriers to entry are extremely high. It is impossible for other firms to enter for a variety of reasons, from a scarcity of resources needed to produce that good and high startup costs to technological advantage and government-granted monopolies. Monopolies technically have absolute price-setting power within the restrictions of what the government allows. Additionally, they still face a downward sloping demand curve, so if they charge prices way too high, much less people will buy the good. The goods that they sell are one of a kind since no other firms are in the market. Monopolies do still need to advertise for 2 main reasons. First, they do still need to pull in consumers and keep the demand for their good as high as possible. Additionally, they want to try and maintain their monopoly on the good and potentially scare off competitors through advertising. Because there is no competition in the market and monopolies have high price setting powers, long-run economic profit is possible. Monopolies are inefficient because no competitors can enter and drive down prices, which reduces consumer surplus and increases producer surplus. Monopolies are generally the most inefficient market structure as prices are higher than the minimum of ATC and MC and the output is lower than what it should be. My example of a monopoly is the trams in Hong Kong. After doing some research, I found out that all the trams in Hong Kong are owned by the Hong Kong Tramways, which was technically fully bought by RATP Dev Transdev in 2010. In 1902, when the proposal for trams in Hong Kong was approved by the government, Hong Kong Tramways was given a monopoly by the government to build and operate these trams. Because electricity from Hong Kong Electric is required, and the government has quite a bit of control over both of these companies, the government has been able to stop other competitors from entering the market. They can determine their own prices, which they set at a rate of $2.30 per ride, which still earns them a profit. Because they have been around for so long, they no longer need to worry about startup costs. The product is not only unique in Hong Kong, but is one of the only double-decker trams in the world. In terms of advertising, every video you see about Hong Kong always includes the trams. They have become a symbolic icon of the city, so this is a huge boost for their tourism advertising. I would assume they charge a price that gets them to their profit maximizing point, not to the allocatively or productively efficient points, because there are no competitors to drive down prices. Finally, perfect competition is a market structure with a huge amount of firms. There are so many different firms in the market that no one firm can have influence on the price of the good they are selling, making all firms price takers. It is also extremely easy for firms to enter or exit the market because of the low costs of entering. Another characteristic of perfectly competitive markets are that all the goods sold are identical, which further contributes to why every good is sold at the exact same price, demand is perfectly elastic, and the marginal revenue curve is the same as the price. There is no advertising in this market structure because there is simply no point. You will not make more profit by wasting your money on advertising. In the long run, zero economic profit is made in a perfectly competitive firm. Short-run economic profit attracts new firms, which shifts the supply curve right and brings down price and marginal revenue for existing firms. As profits go down, firms start to leave, and this continues until they arrive at normal profits. Perfect competition is the most efficient market structure. They are allocatively efficient because price, which is the same as marginal revenue, will always equal marginal cost. Because they are earning normal profits, price, marginal costs, and the minimum of the ATC all intersect at the quantity supplied, making it very efficient. My example of perfect competition is video game stores in the Wanchai Computer Center. There could be countless video game stores in the mall, and no matter how many you added, the price of the games sold would always stay the same. They are all selling a homogeneous good in the form of the exact same video games, so if they charged more than their competitors, people would right away go to a different store. It was also quite apparent that these stores had considerably less advertising and signage than other stores in the center. They were tucked away in smaller storefronts that often looked much less inviting, so clearly not much was spent to enter this market. Although it was slightly more difficult to get permission to take photos in these shops, I recorded down some price comparisons on my own. I looked for specific games that appeared in multiple stores, and one of these examples is the game Tomb Raider, pictured on the left. In all the stores I went to, this game was exactly $368. These characteristics all fit a perfectly competitive market. I would assume no economic profits are being made in the long run since they are simply price takers. This means they sell at the market price, which is productively and allocatively efficient.